Hello and welcome to the Speaking Frankly Football Show. I'm Frank Hughes, the chairman of Skelmersdale United Football Club, and alongside me is my co-host and passionate press officer AJ the Jet. Not that being involved with the football club is a prerequisite for hosting a football podcast, but it certainly helps. We are ready to dive headfirst into the vibrant world of non-league football in the Northwest, and we might even take a moment to discuss some of the bigger headlines in the sport. We'll explore life in the Northwest counties, bring you interviews with well-known faces in the league, and analyse how local teams are performing while making bold predictions for their upcoming matches. Nothing is off the limits here. We'll be diving into all kinds of topics, including complicated refereeing decisions and regulations that often leave fans perplexed. We want to hear from you too. This is your show, so don't hesitate to reach out with topics you want us to tackle. Let's get this conversation started and enjoy every single moment. We are speaking frankly.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Speaking Frankly Football Show. I know normally on these occasions the opening welcome is done by Mr. Frank Hughes itself, but today it's a little bit different. Earlier on in this week, on Monday the 23rd of March, it was announced by Skelmersdale United that they were relocating from their current groundshare arrangement at Burscough and the community ground to the Marine ground, the Marine Travel Stadium in Crosby for the 25-26 season. A move and an announcement that has caused an enormous amount of feedback, discussion and controversy, if you like. So the roles are being switched today and I will be interviewing Mr. Frank Hughes himself. So a warm welcome to Frank.
Hi.
Okay, so we'll begin this at the start. So it's coming up towards the end of the 24-25 season, and to all intents and purposes, the intention was to remain at Burscough, yes?
Yes, most definitely. It was logistically the best option was to remain at the community ground. There's reasons that I'll come to later. I'll explain it fully. But in the meantime, I'd just like to thank Paul Gilchrist, Joe, Kathy, and everybody at Burscough Football Club. They've been extremely welcoming. They provided us a home when we most needed it, so we'll always be indebted to Paul and Burscough Football Club. And it wasn't a decision that was made lightly, I can assure you of that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and you'd formed a positive relationship with Paul Gilchrist as well. You know, Skem had been ground sharing at Burscough for how many years now?
I think it's best part of 3 years. 3
years, okay. And the arrangement between the two clubs had always been harmonious, correct?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I've already gone on record as saying that I rejoined the club 2 years ago at a time where the ground share agreement had already been put in place with Burscough.
Mm-hmm, okay, so to every intention, the idea was to remain at Burscough. Now, at what point over the course of this period of time did it become an inkling in the back of your head that you might have to look for somewhere else?
Well, I think I can honestly say I'm backed up with proof that when we interviewed James Leary on the show several weeks ago, before we went on mic and recorded the show, we talked off mic and he did offer his help because he knew the predicament that we were in as a football club and that we wanted to relocate back to the town. And with their plans of moving into a much bigger stadium and the expertise surrounding that move and how they're funding it, he was open to suggestions and help to move things forward for us should we at any stage get a piece of land. And that was as much as the conversation really was. I found out sometime later that the AFC Liverpool weren't renewing their ground share agreement with Marine, and that there would be a position at the Marine's ground for a ground share for anybody that wanted to become involved with Marine. So from that point onwards, I'm pursuing a ground share agreement, as you have to every year, unless you've got a 2-3 year agreement, which we couldn't really tie ourselves to. So originally, when the ground share agreement started with Bearsco, Skelmersdale United were expecting to go back to the JMO sooner rather than later. It didn't quite work that way. But what they had is they had a pay as they play contract with Bearsco. When I came back, the beginning of this season, that changed to a whole season contract, which obviously gave us the season to see out. So we had a 1 year arrangement until the end of the season. So it wasn't players we knew we weren't going back to Skem anytime soon.
For the remainder of this season, at the very least.
And I think the one thing that you probably learnt in the short period of time that you've been with the football club is that there are deadlines. The 31st of March every year is the deadline for ground grading, ground share agreements. They all have to be in so they can be scrutinised by the respective leagues. As it is now, with it would have been Northwest Counties only between Bearsco and Skem, because we're both in the Northwest Counties. With Marine, they're in the National League North, so it's got to be ratified by them. It's got to be ratified by the Northwest Counties, and then it's got to be ratified by the FA as well. So Paul won't. He won't be annoyed by me saying that he's an extremely busy person. Paul Gilchrist is an extremely busy person. I have been pursuing a ground share agreement from when I first mentioned it again on Boxing Day before the turn of the year. And I went into overdrive a little bit in January and February, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that the supporters knew that come the end of the season, relegated or not, we had a ground share agreement in, whether we get a reprieve from the Northwest Counties, we end up in the West Lancashire, the Cheshire League or the Liverpool County Premier League. I wanted the supporters to know that we had a ground share agreement in place. It's getting very, very close to the deadline. So Monday, probably as early as Sunday, I'd made the decision that I had to act quickly. I didn't realise how busy Paul was, and we never know what's going on behind the scenes. But I couldn't get in touch with Paul, so I decided that I had to make a big decision. And I stutter a little bit here because logistically it makes sense to be, I know what people are saying, but logistically it makes good sense to be at Bearsco. It's 7.5 miles away from the centre of Skem, as opposed to the 13.5 miles it'll take to get to Marine. But there's only a 9-minute difference in terms of how logistically it takes you to get there in a car. But yeah, so the decision was made purely because the deadline was coming up. I couldn't take any risks, that, and I'm not saying for 1 minute that Paul would have reneged on the gentleman's agreement that we had, but it was getting very, very close to the deadline, and it was a business decision, and Paul understands it. Yeah, I understand it. I think everybody, the board of directors behind me, they understand it. It was a decision that had to be made, and by and large, I think it's been well received in most quarters. But there's one or two people that don't agree with it.
Well, we'll come to that one in a little while. So, in the process of reaching this gentleman's agreement with Paul, and then having to make this decision in moving the club to a different location to secure its future. Were you examining any other logistics? Because as you say, Marine is a little bit further out than perhaps would have been liked. And I know that the JMO was heavily identified, as was Prescott Cables, whom we've ground shared with in the past. Did they cross your mind as places to go to?
Well, first of all, no, because up to Monday morning, the decision, had it been presented itself and the paperwork had been ready, would have been to sign a ground share agreement with Bearsco. So in terms of being able to shop around, I didn't really have the opportunity. Prescott Cables comes with its own issues as well, logistically, getting there. Parking, as does Marine in many ways, but in terms of approaching them, no, I didn't have the time to do that or negotiate a deal. I got the best offer that I was going to get, and that offer came totally out of the blue. There was probably 3 clubs that Marine could have chosen. But they ended up going with us. The relationship between Skem and Marine has always been good. Mm-hmm. And looking at the facilities, second to none. It's a National League North ground, and anybody that's been there before will know. Even before they made vast improvements over the last 3, 4, 5 years since the great run that they had against Tottenham.
In the FA Cup, yes.
Yeah, they made a lot of money there. They made great improvements around the ground. Mm-hmm. It was a bit of a no-brainer in terms of where we should go. From a professional standpoint, we knew that it wouldn't fail any ground grading criteria. Everything's in place. It's a really, really professional, well-run club by James, the CEO, and his dad, who's the chairman, Paul. It's a fantastic setup, and we'll obviously come to it a little bit later, but it's an opportunity to dust ourselves down and refresh, reinvigorate the club, I suppose. Yeah.
Which then brings me back to the JMO, which obviously Skem has played at before. It's very much the sporting heartland of Skelmersdale as a town, and I know that your primary objective was to get the club back to Skelmersdale in itself. Do you think that looking back, the JMO could have been examined as an option against Bearsco even without this deadline that you were running towards?
When I first come back to the club in 2023, beginning of May 2023, I had a lot of relationships that I needed to repair between the football club and various organisations, one of which was the JMO, because people had fallen out within Skelmersdale United Football Club, had quite seriously fallen out with JMO. So I investigated. I spoke to John Mallinson. I spoke to Steve Tomlinson, who's his, I think he's PA, in charge of his affairs. Spoke to Charlie at the JMO. As you know, we train there every Wednesday night. So there is a relationship there. We've managed to rebuild the relationship. The issue has always been with the fact that they failed the FIFA bounce test and that the carpet, as we call it, needed to be replaced. That's not changed. So that wasn't an option in terms of we couldn't move from Bearsco back into the JMO automatically. A lot of things would have had to be done in the meantime. Now, we just mentioned at the March 31st deadline, they would have had to gone through that process of ground grading all over again for us to go back there. So it wasn't a feasible option, and I'm not saying in the future if all the right people can get to the table and negotiate a way for Skem United to go back to the JMO, providing that they improve the facilities so that we can do so. And that's not me having a go, that's what ground grading's all about. But No, it's and even because somebody asked the question, what happens if you go down into the Cheshire League? Surely, because Clay Brow are playing in the Cheshire League at JMO, you could go there. Well, yeah, technically, if you look at it from that perspective, you can, but we're not at that point of negotiation, first of all. But also, it's if we get, the ambition, even if we get relegated, is to bounce back as quickly as we can. And if we bounce back, we're in the same predicament as we were when we failed the FIFA bounce test. We wouldn't be able to get into the Northwest Counties because the JMO is not of that grading.
Okay, fair enough. So the decision largely has kind of come from you, and you were the one who has been identified as the key kind of orchestrator from Skem's point of view. But were the other directors and other bodies within Skelmersdale United involved in this decision?
Listen, of course, yeah, everybody was informed. We spoke individually and collectively, and we all come to the same conclusion that if a groundshare agreement had to be signed with Marine, as opposed to with Bearsco, if it couldn't be pulled across the line in time, then that was what we were going to do.
And in terms of the arrangement with Marine, will this put more of a financial burden on the club, given that it is a bigger ground with better facilities?
Not at all. We've got exactly the same deal as we had with Bearsco. So from that point, yeah, it's a good deal all round.
Okay. There are some who have suggested that you're removing the club from its traditional Lancashire base within Skelmersdale, but within the Wigan postcode area, and putting it in Merseyside. Is the Lancashire-based notion and tradition something that you agree with?
Listen, what we want to do, and my main aim since I've come back to the football club, is to secure a piece of land in Skelmersdale that we can develop and we can return to Skem. The main objective between now and that point when it arrives is to make sure that we continue the legacy of Skelmersdale United Football Club. And if that means to protect the short-term aims and move out to Marine, that's exactly what's got to be done. It's a business decision. People might not agree with it. I understand why they don't agree with it, because let's be honest about it. If I was in a similar position supporting from the outside in, logistically, if it didn't drive or get in buses, connections, travel, whatever to football, I can totally understand where people are coming from. But my main objective was to make sure that we continue the legacy of Skelmersdale United Football Club, and I believe that's what we're doing.
Will the move affect the successful youth team playing as Lancashire in the ESPA, the Educational Semi-Pro Academy?
No, not at all. They'll just carry on as they are. And to be fair, they are run rather separately. I mean, basically they play under our licence, if you like, under the name of Skem, but it's very much run by the ESPFA, so that none of that will change.
Okay. What would you say to supporters who feel alienated because they cannot get to Crosby for logistics? Either they can't drive or the public transport options just aren't there for them.
Well, I first of all, I'd say reach out to people on the socials, people that are going to games, people that do have transport. I always have a full car every week. There's other people within the committee and volunteers that have often helped transport supporters to away games, never mind anything else. So we're always there on hand to help. We'll find out the logistics of getting to these games and how we can advise people on how they can get there. We'll try our best to make the transition to Marine as easy as we possibly can. But it's not going to come without its obstacles and hurdles. We know that it's a means to an end, unfortunately.
Well, we were at Bearsco, and particularly in this season when we've struggled so greatly on the pitch, we have seen a quite increased number of fans staying away, which means income through the ticket office has dwindled, income at the bar has dwindled, programme sales have dwindled, finances on the whole for the club through the pitch have dwindled. Do you anticipate some kind of loss or gain financially from the move to Marine?
Well, as you've already alluded to there, we're losing money on a game-to-game basis anyway. And it's fair to say that if you go back to when the original groundshare agreement was signed, a lot of people within Skem threatened never to go and watch Skem again while they were playing at Bearscough. So we've always had stay-away fans. I understand if we're not winning, people don't want to watch football when we're not winning. I can totally understand that. That's their prerogative. We'd love to have the additional income because the problem is people, whether they realise it or they don't, everything that's gone wrong in Skem is down to finances. We know of clubs within our area, within our division, that are playing players £350 a week. We can't compete on those scales whatsoever. So they're the obstacles that we've got to climb. But when people are staying away and they're not supporting the club, it makes it more difficult. But once again, those things are not going to change until we get our own piece of land and develop it in Skem. Things are not going to change overnight. Keep saying it about there's no magic. There's no magic wand. It's not a case of Cranky Frankie's destroying the football club. It's Cranky Frankie hasn't got the money, the finances to make the club successful, and they're very difficult to. Anybody can imagine playing every single game away from home. You're never going to make. You're never going to make money. I mean, it's never. Listen, it's never really made a great deal of money. Skem United Football Club. When Skem United Football Club won the Northern Premier League West or North, whatever it was at the time, around about 2014-15, the gates actually went down, and we were playing at Stormy Corner then. So the critics and the armchair critics that come in and say, Frank Hughes is destroying the football club. The football club was getting destroyed a long time ago when I wasn't there, and unfortunately, and many decades even further back, if you go further back than that, it's always been on a slippery slope since the days it turned to semi-professional as opposed to amateur.
Does the location within Crosby provide any clarity on what league Skem will be playing in should relegation from the North West Counties be confirmed?
We don't know where we're going to be. I think I've referred to it somewhere in the notes on the other show. Is that there's all kinds of permutations as to whether we get a reprieve, points per game, ratios, and the best of the worst teams, ground grading issues. We don't know at this stage, and we probably won't know until probably around about the 19th, 20th of May, whether we've been reprieved.
Okay, so in the middle of that time, it's merely a waiting game.
Yeah, I've spoken to Paul Lawler, the chairman of the North West Counties. He's in the same position as me. He can't provide me with any more clarity than he's already aware of. It's down to the FA at the end of the day. The North West Counties have gone on record, I think I've said it before, they've gone on record as saying that they don't want to relegate any team if there's less than 20 in a division. So they've made that clear to the FA. It's up to the FA now to decide what they're doing with the lateral movements, relocations of teams, and ground grading issues. That's up to them. It's out of our hands.
Okay. I'd like to turn our attention, if I may, to events a few years ago. So White Moss Park was taken from the club in 2017 or thereabouts. You weren't chairman at the time, but were you aware of what was going on there and how the club came to be sort of removed from that ground?
So we're talking about Stormy Corner, yeah. Right. Well, okay. Right. Skem, as it stood then, I'd left the club, like you say, in 2011. So between 2011 and 2016-17, I went totally underground. I didn't go back to the club for various reasons. I wasn't made welcome. Maybe something down to the fact that I'd resigned unexpectedly. I don't know. I don't know the reasons behind it. But there was a bitter sort of taste between me and some of the supporters and the directors that I used to consider friends at the time. And so when they got kicked off Stormy Corner, before they got kicked off Stormy Corner, I got a phone call from Martin Gilchrist, who was the landlord at the time. And he said to me, listen, my relationship with the football club has broken down. He said, I'm about to evict them. He said, but if you can put together a committee and take over as chairman again, he said, I'll give you the lease for as long as you want. I approached the football club at the time and their chairman, the chairman who was Paul Griffiths, who sadly passed away since. I approached him and he spoke on the behalf of the committee and took back the information that I'd fed to him in terms of putting money into the football club to save them from relegation. They decided that wasn't a route that they wanted to go down, and that was the end of that. I probably engaged in too much of a social media war, and the one thing you know that once you've whatever you say, it gets turned around time and time again, and it becomes misconstrued, and the rumour mill just extends and it gets worse. You can't do anything about it. People have got their opinions. I mean, even someone said on social media a few weeks ago, I don't care what the truth is, I still don't believe anything about Frank Hughes, So you can't, even when facts are presented to someone, you can't get them to, they don't want to believe it. So the position with Skem was I did try to save the football club originally. Then when they were ground sharing at Prescott, once they'd been kicked off, I didn't see any way that they were coming back to Skem. So I had the possibility of a lease on Stormy Corner, which was now empty, and I thought to myself, well, I don't want to see Skem without a football club, without a semi-professional football club. So I decided to try and start a new football club, and I'd got to a really I got to a pivotal point where it became a reality. And then I found out that JMO, John Mallinson, had offered like a lifeline to Skem United Football Club. So I decided to drop my plans to start a new football club. And then I approached the Skem United again, and I said to them, listen, I'll put some money into the football club to stop you from getting relegated. I think it was just the turn of Christmas, might have been around about February. I offered £25,000 to put into the coffers. And my intention was then we could stave off relegation, and when we come to ground sharing at the JMO, we'd hit the ground running. And once again, that was rejected. And then I left it alone. I didn't go anywhere near the football club. I wasn't really wanted. Nobody wanted me to get back involved with the football club. So I kept away. And I went quiet, like I was originally. I'm bearing in mind from 2011, after my first tenure as chairman, I left the football club and didn't say anything for years. I wasn't vocal. I had to put up with an awful lot of adverse publicity, and I just sucked it in. I read it every time it presented itself, and I never replied to it because I knew it was a waste of time doing that.
And in regards to the sale of the sale of White Moss Park, did you have any involvement in that at all?
No. None whatsoever. When I joined the board of directors, and in terms of timelines, I couldn't tell you what particular year it was, but I got involved with the football club when the negotiations between Chequer Properties and Skelmersdale United had already started. And what had happened was they set up an executive board of 4 members out of, they probably had about 12 directors at the time, but 4 of them were involved in negotiations with Chequer Properties. And as everybody knows, in terms of when you're purchasing land, you have to keep everything close to your chest because you can get gazumped. So they signed a confidentiality clause with Chequer Properties, and they couldn't even reveal anything to the committee. They could give them updates on what kind of facility they were going to expect when they moved out of White Moss Park, and that was as much as the rest of the committee and the wider community were aware of. So when I came back to the club, Arthur Gore was the chairman, and I said to him, how much... The club was in debt. The club owed Barclays Bank, I think, around about £50,000, and they didn't know at which stage they'd foreclose on them. You have to bear in mind that there was no businessmen with business. There was no people there with business acumen as such. They were all happy volunteers, and they made mistakes. But what they did is they went into these negotiations with Chequer Properties, and they didn't seek any legal advice. And if you speak to any of them, to any of the people, the people that were on the board of directors at the time, they'll say that's the biggest mistake that they made. They didn't seek legal advice. They didn't think they had to.
So the debt was called in by the bank, was it?
I think it must have been getting close to being called in. I don't think it was, but I think the support group that were running Skem United Football Club at the time felt as though they had to do something before that it got to that stage.
So they handed the stadium over to Chequer Properties, is that right?
I don't know how simplistic it is. I mean, a lot of people say that I've got the paperwork on. There was no paperwork as such. The only paperwork that existed between Chequer Properties and Skem United Football Club was actually when they signed a groundshare agreement at Stormy Corner, or signed the lease document with Stormy Corner. So that was, well, that's the sort of top and bottom of that. Really, there's no. Sorry, what was your previous question?
My previous question was, in terms of White Moss Park, was it sold sort of or taken out of the club's hands? Right.
So yeah, I'm saying I don't know how simplistic that transition was, because don't forget there was only 4 people involved in those negotiations.
And you weren't one of them?
I wasn't one of them. No.
Okay.
I wasn't one of them.
And because of the non-disclosure agreement, you weren't told and couldn't be told?
No, I couldn't be told. Next to nothing. You'd get dribs and drabs of information like possibilities and what you were going to get in terms of a clubhouse, stands, changing rooms, little things like that. But I assumed, like everybody else did, that once White Moss Park was sold off and the new ground was built, that Skem United Football Club would take ownership of that. I didn't realise that Chequer Properties would still own the football ground as such.
Right.
I didn't even know that.
So, in effect, the club lost that ground in order to pay back this debt of £50,000. Is that sort of the crux of the matter?
And you know what? It wasn't such a bad thing, really, because we've got ourselves out of debt. It's not the greatest facility.
But it was Skem's home. It was
Skem's home, and it was fit for purpose. It was fit for the league that we were in, and fit for the division above it. So, in terms of, we were paying a peppercorn rent of £1 a year, without the hassle of owning a piece of land. I think probably the things that we didn't focus on at the time was the fact that we should be looking at whatever money that we're making, rather than be ambitious all the time, is putting a little bit away to improve the facilities, because I think a lot of people at that time believed that Checker Properties were responsible for the property, but the lease would tell you otherwise, and anybody with pair of glasses and the brain to read a lease could have read that themselves, as I did.
Okay. Realistically, can either of those two pieces of land, either White Moss Park or Stormy Corner, can they be repurchased back by the club? Have you
White Moss
examined
Park's
this?
been built on, isn't it? So
right.
as you know, you should have been aware of, but not being a local lad. But Stormy Corner, as far as we know, it's been sold off. It's I think Marshalls, the commercial land agents, I think they own it. There was talk of it being sold off as a haulage yard, or they were going to build on it. It's not the greatest piece of land in terms of building on, because it's built on a basic peat bog with mine shafts in sort of various locations. So I don't think it can sustain a big heavy building unless somebody puts absolutely millions into the infrastructure and the foundations to build it upon. So I don't even. As it stands now, you go to Stormy Corner, as I often do, and I stand in the middle of the overgrowth and I look around and recall all the good days that I had there and others did. A lot of fond memories, and it seems to be such a shame. But whether a return to Stormy Corner, if it was available, is the best option, I don't know, because I think realistically, if you're looking towards the future and you want a progressive, ambitious football club that's going to attract stakeholders and private investors and move up the football pyramid, you're probably looking at a build the size of what Marine, are trying to produce locally to them. So you probably need 8 to 10 acres of land to develop slowly. Get something fit for purpose to start off with, and then go from there.
Looking to the to the future, then, what updates are there on getting back to Skem? I suppose one thing that's kind of been sort of lacking, if you like, although the noise is there from fans and people on the outside alike, is that there hasn't been much update on this. Where are the club up to with trying to get back to Skem?
Well, in fairness, the problem with politics, and I do use the term sort of loosely, is things don't run very quickly. So it's not a matter of people are not being informed. There's very, very little information available to me that I can pass on to them. But the one thing that I will say is that the armchair critics have been invited to the games. They've been invited to talk to me personally. They've been invited to the open forums to speak, and they've never turned up. So the door is wide open. So anybody that's spoken to me and anybody that's turned up to the forums has always been fully updated in terms of what we're looking at and who we're speaking to. I'm speaking to the council. That's
West Lancashire Borough or Lancashire County?
West Lancashire Borough Council. And, I'm asking all the right questions. I'm speaking to all the right people. At the end of the day, we need a piece of land that we can develop, and there's not a great deal of land available in Skem. And it's getting to the point now where there's even less because people are building houses on it. So we've got to establish a route back into Skem. We've got to find a piece of land. What I was told 2 years ago when I came back to the football club was that there was 5 pieces of land that were available to Skem, but they would not pass legal or planning. I've since been told that the people that told me that hadn't the right to tell me that. They didn't have the power to tell me that, and indeed they were wrong to tell me that. So that set the club back a good 18 months in terms of what I was trying to achieve with West Lancashire Borough Council. But thanks to West Lancashire Borough Council, I've been put more in the picture, and I know a little bit more about the truth of the matter rather than the myth. So yeah, listen, we look towards maybe purchasing private land if we can, or to be gifted land whether that be privately or from the West Lancashire Borough Council. But until we get to that point where we do get a piece of land, we can't make any predictions or make any plans.
In terms of your first term, if you like, as chairman of the club, there's an awful lot going around that of naysayers that you wrecked the club. Can you just give us an oversight as to your first term within the club and what you feel was achieved there?
Right, in the 5 years, my first 5 years as chairman before I resigned, 4 of those seasons out of those 5 we qualified for the playoffs in the Northern Premier League West. We went neck to neck, toe to toe with Chester Football Club. We were on a budget of around about £1,700 a week. They were on a budget of around about £15,000 a week. Like I said, they pipped us on goal difference. We were very, very unfortunate. Last day of the season, I think we won 7-2. If we'd have won 8-2 or 6-1, we would have won the league and we would have progressed to the Northern Premier League. But unfortunately, we didn't. We won the Lancashire Cup during my tenure. We had a charity match, the Co-op Bank representative side against an Alan Kennedy Legends, Liverpool Legends football team. We raised over £10,000 there. We had over 2,500 people at the ground. And a lot of those people were the same people that complained that they didn't know where it was. But when the big occasions came around, they turned out in the droves. Probably one of my biggest successes during that period of time was we were playing a second qualifying round match in the FA Cup, and we'd drawn Bearscough at home. And there was a local free newspaper there, and somebody phoned me up and said, "Listen, we've got and I forget what the terminology is now for the top right hand sort of box on a newspaper advert, but they said it's available and it's at a reduced price. Now, it would normally say be £350, it was only £250. I think I negotiated that further down and they give it to me for about £150. And we advertised the match and said, ticket office, tickets only, get your tickets for this big game against, I think it was around about the first season that we were at Stormy Corner. And that we turned out we ended up with a gate of over 1,000, which I think was the record gate that we had at that particular time, was a record for Skemming in its recent history. So there was a lot of positives there. There was a lot of things that were working in our favour, a lot of things that weren't. A lot of mistakes were getting made. We weren't putting money to one side. I was part of the problem, spinning far too many plates, being far more ambitious than I was comfortable with at times. And maybe we should have just consolidated at that particular time and grown a little bit more slowly and looked more towards improving the infrastructure of the football club and the stadium that we were playing at.
And who was your manager through these periods?
Well, first of all, when we moved from White Moss Park, it was Paul Gallagher, and then during my period, my 5 years as chairman, I brought Tommy Lawson to the club. We were brought to the club for the second time, but yeah, Tommy Lawson, one of the most successful managers in modern times. There's absolutely no doubt about that, by the way.
Yeah, who himself, along with you, has come under a lot of fire of late. I know you speak to Tommy on a regular basis. Is he still sort of enjoying his football? Is he confident, in the club's success? And will he be here next year?
Well, first of all, it sounds rather odd saying this, and I think I've said it before, and I know Tommy, we've discussed it on previous occasions with a lot of people, and people won't forgive me for saying this, but everything apart from the results we're enjoying the process. We believe in what we're doing. We know it's going to take time, but I've always said stability. You need stability. You need support. You need to have a tight bond of people, and I believe that we've got a tight bond of people within the football club. And the only way that you're going to the only way that you're going to get out of the predicament that you're in is by having good, solid foundations. And I think that forms part of it. The relationship between Tommy and I has always been good. In the years that I wasn't involved in football and he still was, we remained friends through that period. And Tommy's quite open and honest kind of person. We had a conversation before Christmas and he said to me, listen, Frank, if it ever gets to a stage where you feel as though you need to look elsewhere for a manager because, you know, the results are not going particularly well, then don't think for 1 minute that sacking me is going to be an issue, because we will always remain friends. He said, I might not agree with the decision, but we'll always remain friends. And I said to him what I've just said then, that my opinion is that we've done everything in the previous season, sacking Matt Potter, which have gone on record as saying as it was a mistake, and that feeling that had we given the season that he would have created a squad that would have given us stability, whether we'd have avoided relegation or not. Certainly going into the second season, if we would have been relegated, I think we'd have had an established squad that would have competed well in that division. And on the flip side of that as well, if you take the team that we've got now and you take them back to the beginning of the season, they don't get relegated. And I know it's hard to sort of back that up because we're still losing games. But we're at a point now where psychology is playing a big part in losing games as well. And if people think that's bump, well, I'm telling you that it isn't.
They've never been a 20-year-old on the pitch.
No, certainly not. And for the first time at training last night, I went in front of the players, explained to them my plans for the future, explained the reason why we're moving to Marine, and the smiles on those faces of the lads, knowing that we were going to Marine, has invigorated them straight away. They're looking forward to it. They know what the ground is like. They're looking forward to playing on there. It's given them a lift. And whether you look at the rights or wrongs, or you try to find reasons why we shouldn't have done it, or I shouldn't have agreed to a ground share at Marine, the one thing I think that we can all agree upon is that a fresh start might do us all good. And as I say, the sort of final question there was, is Tommy still on board? Yeah, Tommy's most definitely still on board. We talk on a day-to-day basis, and we're both of the same opinion. We're enjoying the process apart from the fact that we're losing. That's, as simple as that.
Okay. Well, we'll end the interview there, Frank. Thank you very much for coming on record and elaborating all the points raised there. If you are a fan of the club or a fan of football in general and you still have questions or concerns about Skem's impending move to Marine, please inbox the club, please comment on any of our social media channels, and we will happily do our best to put your mind at ease as to what is to come for Skem in the future. Until then, thank you very much, Frank.
Cheers, thank you.